In the year 931 BC, a king sat alone in his palace. He had everything: wealth beyond measure, power absolute, wisdom legendary, 700 wives, 300 concubines, gold flowing like water through Jerusalem. And as he sat there, surrounded by everything a man could desire, he wrote something that would haunt humanity for 3,000 years. He wrote, "Meaningless, meaningless. Everything is meaningless." This wasn't a depressed poet. This wasn't a struggling philosopher. This was Solomon, the wisest man who ever lived. And what he discovered about existence was so dark, so unforgiving, that religious scholars have been trying to soften it ever since. But tonight we read it as it was written, raw, unfiltered, undeniable. This is Ecclesiastes, the book they don't want you to take literally, the book that reveals the terrible truth about meaning, purpose, and the futility of human striving. Before we descend into this darkness, understand something. What you're about to hear contradicts everything modern spirituality teaches, everything motivational culture promises, everything society tells you about success and meaning. If you're ready to see what Solomon saw, if you're willing to stare into the abyss of existential truth without flinching, then subscribe to the Hidden Codex. Turn on notifications, because once you understand Ecclesiastes, you can't unknow it, and most people aren't ready for that. But you're still here, so let's begin. Solomon wasn't always dark. In his youth, he was brilliant, idealistic. When God appeared to him in a dream and offered anything he desired, Solomon didn't ask for wealth or power. He asked for wisdom, and God gave it to him, along with everything else. By the time Solomon wrote Ecclesiastes, he had tested every philosophy, pursued every pleasure, built every monument, acquired every possession, slept with every woman. He had experienced more of life than 1,000 men combined. And his conclusion? Vanity, emptiness, a chasing after wind. The Hebrew word he uses is hevel. It doesn't just mean meaningless, it means vapor, breath. Something that appears substantial but dissolves the moment you try to grasp it. That's what Solomon discovered about everything. Listen to how he begins. What does man gain from all his labor at which he toils under the sun? Generations come and generations go, but the earth remains forever. The sun rises and the sun sets and hurries back to where it rises. He's describing the cosmic machine, the endless cycle, the wheel that turns and turns and produces nothing. You work, you build, you achieve, and then you die. Someone else takes what you built. They die too. The cycle continues. Nothing changes. Solomon looked at human civilization and saw what most refused to see, that all our striving, all our ambition, all our desperate attempts to matter are ultimately swallowed by time. But here's where it gets darker. Solomon didn't just observe this, he tested it, systematically, ruthlessly. First, he pursued pleasure. Chapter 2, verse 1. I said to myself, come now, I will test you with pleasure to find out what is good. He built gardens, magnificent pools. He acquired singers, both men and women. He denied himself nothing his eyes desired. He refused his heart no pleasure. And the result? When I surveyed all that my hands had done and what I had toiled to achieve, everything was meaningless, a chasing after wind. Nothing was gained under the sun. Think about that. The man with unlimited resources, the man who could fulfill every desire, the man who experienced pleasure at a level you and I cannot even imagine. And he found it empty. Not because the pleasures weren't real. They were. But because pleasure is fleeting. It satisfies for a moment, then demands more. An endless hunger that grows with feeding. Solomon discovered what every hedonist eventually discovers. That pleasure pursued as meaning becomes a tyrant, and that tyrant is never satisfied. So he turned to wisdom. If pleasure was empty, perhaps knowledge would provide meaning. He studied everything: philosophy, science, the nature of wisdom and madness and folly. He became the most learned man of his age. And he wrote, "For with much wisdom comes much sorrow. The more knowledge, the more grief. Because here's what wisdom reveals. The wise man and the fool both die. Both are forgotten. Both return to dust. The wise man sees this coming. The fool doesn't. That's the only difference. And is that better? To see the abyss clearly? To understand the futility with perfect clarity?" Solomon writes, "The wise have eyes in their heads while the fool walks in darkness. But I came to realize that the same fate overtakes them both. This is the curse of consciousness, the burden of awareness. You see more, understand more, and it brings you no comfort, only the clear vision of inevitable extinction. Then Solomon turned to work, to legacy, to building something that would outlast him. He constructed the temple in Jerusalem, one of the wonders of the ancient world. 7 years of labor, the finest materials, the most skilled craftsmen. He built palaces, aqueducts, cities. And then he looked at what he created and asked the question that destroys every builder. What does it matter? Chapter 2, verse 18. I hated all the things I had toiled for under the sun, because I must leave them to the one who comes after me. And who knows whether that person will be wise or foolish. Yet they will have control over all the fruit of my toil, into which I have poured my effort and skill under the sun. Your life's work, everything you build, it goes to someone else, someone who didn't earn it, someone who might destroy it, someone who will definitely be forgotten just like you. This terrified Solomon, not death itself, but the cosmic joke of it all. You spend your life creating, and death makes it someone else's problem. But Solomon went even deeper. He looked at justice, at morality, at the structure society claims orders the universe. And he saw something that shattered him. Chapter 3, verse 16. I saw something else under the sun. In the place of judgment, wickedness was there. In the place of justice, wickedness was there. The righteous suffer, the wicked prosper. The good die young, the evil live long. There is no cosmic balance, no karmic justice, no divine intervention ensuring fairness, just random chance in a morally indifferent universe. He writes in chapter 9, the race is not to the swift or the battle to the strong, nor does food come to the wise or wealth to the brilliant or favor to the learned. But time and chance happen to them all. Time and chance, not merit, not virtue, not hard work, randomness. Do you understand how subversive this is? How it undermines every religious promise, every moral framework, every just world fantasy we cling to? Solomon, the wisest man in history, is telling you, the universe doesn't care. There is no cosmic referee. Justice is a human invention that reality does not honor. And then he says something even more disturbing. Chapter 9, verse 5. For the living know that they will die, but the dead know nothing. They have no further reward, and even their name is forgotten. This is not resurrection theology. This is not promises of eternal life. This is annihilation. You die. You cease to know. You cease to be. And eventually no one remembers you existed. That's it. That's the end. Solomon looked at death with unflinching honesty and saw no afterlife, no reward, no continuation, just the void. Now here's where religious scholars get uncomfortable. They try to contextualize, to explain away, to claim Solomon was depressed or speaking from a worldly perspective, or that these are the thoughts of a fallen man. But that's cowardice. Because Solomon never recants. He never says, but actually. He never offers easy comfort. Instead, he doubles down. Chapter 7, verse 2. It is better to go to a house of mourning than to go to a house of feasting, for death is the destiny of everyone. The living should take this to heart. Think about funerals. Why are they important? Because they force you to confront what you spend your life avoiding. Mortality, impermanence, the fact that everything ends. And Solomon says, this is better than celebration, better than pleasure, better than distraction, because it's true. And truth, no matter how dark, is more valuable than comfortable lies. He writes, sorrow is better than laughter, because a sad face is good for the heart. Most people run from sorrow. They medicate it, distract from it, deny it. But Solomon understood something profound. That sorrow connects you to reality. That sadness, properly understood, is wisdom. Because if you're not sad about mortality, about meaninglessness, about the cosmic indifference, you're not paying attention. But here's where Ecclesiastes becomes truly dangerous. Because after destroying every source of meaning, every comfortable belief, every hopeful illusion, Solomon doesn't offer a new foundation. He doesn't say, but here's the real answer. Instead, he says something shocking. Chapter 9, verse 7. Go, eat your food with gladness and drink your wine with a joyful heart, for God has already approved what you do. Always be clothed in white, and always anoint your head with oil. Enjoy life with your wife, whom you love, all the days of this meaningless life that God has given you under the sun. Do you see what he's doing? He's not saying meaning exists if you look hard enough. He's saying meaning doesn't exist, and that's okay. Eat, drink, love, enjoy. Not because it matters in the cosmic sense, but because it's what you have. The pleasures are still empty. The work is still futile. Death still comes for everyone. But while you're here, while you have this brief flicker of consciousness in an unconscious universe, you might as well enjoy it. This is not hedonism. Hedonism seeks pleasure as meaning. This is something else. This is pleasure without illusion, enjoyment without purpose. Life lived fully in the recognition of its own futility. Solomon is teaching you to embrace the absurd, to live passionately in a meaningless world, to build sandcastles knowing the tide is coming, and to be okay with that. Chapter 3, verse 12. I know that there is nothing better for people than to be happy and to do good while they live, that each of them may eat and drink and find satisfaction in all their toil. This is the gift of God. Notice he doesn't say it's meaningful. He says it's a gift, a temporary gift in a temporary life, but still worth receiving. This is the wisdom that terrifies religious authorities, because it removes the need for cosmic justification. You don't need heaven to make earth worthwhile. You don't need eternal life to make this life valuable. You don't need ultimate meaning to justify your choices. You just live, fully, honestly, without the desperate need for it to matter beyond itself. But Solomon adds one more observation that changes everything. Chapter 12, verse 1. Remember your Creator in the days of your youth, before the days of trouble come and the years approach when you will say, I find no pleasure in them. After all his nihilism, all his darkness, all his unflinching staring into the void, Solomon still points to God, not as answer, not as comfort, but as reality. God exists. The Creator exists. And that Creator made a world where nothing lasts, where the wise and the fool die the same death, where justice is random and meaning is absent. Why? Solomon doesn't say. He just acknowledges it. This is perhaps the most disturbing part of Ecclesiastes. It's not atheistic. It's not saying God doesn't exist. It's saying God exists and the world is still meaningless. That God created a cosmic machine that grinds everything to dust. And that you, small and temporary, must live in that machine, knowing it, seeing it, unable to escape it. This is the terror at the heart of Ecclesiastes. Not that God is absent, but that God is present and indifferent to the meaning you desperately seek. Solomon ends with these words, Now all has been heard. Here is the conclusion of the matter. Fear God and keep his commandments, for this is the duty of all mankind. For God will bring every deed into judgment, including every hidden thing, whether it is good or evil. Fear God. Not love, not trust. Fear. Because God created the mechanism. God set the rules. God made you capable of desiring meaning in a universe that provides none. That's worth fearing. And the judgment? It's not hope. It's not promise of reward. It's the final accounting. The moment when everything you did, everything you built, everything you were is revealed as the vapor it always was. 3,000 years later, we still haven't absorbed what Solomon wrote. We still chase meaning, still build monuments, still believe our work matters in some cosmic ledger. We still run from the truth Ecclesiastes reveals, that you will die, that you will be forgotten, that everything you create will crumble, that the universe doesn't care, and that no amount of success, pleasure, wisdom, or virtue changes this fundamental reality. But here's what most people miss. Ecclesiastes isn't depressing once you truly understand it. It's liberating. Because if nothing ultimately matters, then you're free to choose what matters to you now. If there's no cosmic purpose, then you can create your own purpose without the burden of getting it right. If death comes for everyone, then you're released from the tyranny of legacy. Solomon discovered the terrible freedom of meaninglessness, and he invites you to live in it, not by denying it, not by pretending there's hidden meaning if you just look hard enough, but by accepting it, fully, completely, and then living anyway. That's the wisdom of Ecclesiastes. Not that life is meaningless and therefore not worth living, but that life is meaningless and therefore yours to define. The question Solomon leaves you with is simple. Will you keep chasing meaning that doesn't exist? Will you keep building monuments to your own significance? Will you keep pretending the machine has purpose? Or will you accept the vapor? Embrace the breath. Live fully in the recognition that none of this lasts. And find, in that acceptance, a strange kind of peace. Most people can't do it. Most people need the lies, the comfortable stories, the promises of meaning and purpose and eternal significance. But you're still here, which means maybe you're ready to see what Solomon saw, that everything is meaningless, and that's okay. Now let's go deeper into something scholars rarely discuss. The structure of Ecclesiastes itself reveals Solomon's method. He doesn't argue philosophically. He doesn't build systematic theology. He observes, tests, reports. This is empirical nihilism, evidence-based meaninglessness. Solomon approaches existence like a scientist approaches an experiment. He forms hypotheses about what might provide meaning, tests them rigorously, and reports his findings without bias or wishful thinking. And every single hypothesis fails. Every single test returns the same result: vanity. This methodological honesty is what makes Ecclesiastes so devastating. You can't dismiss it as mere pessimism or depression. Solomon isn't guessing. He's not theorizing. He's reporting what he actually found when he tested everything. Consider the breadth of his experiment. He tested material wealth. Chapter 2, verse 8. I amassed silver and gold for myself, and the treasure of kings and provinces. He became richer than anyone before or after him, and he found it meaningless. He tested intellectual achievement. He became the wisest man alive. Kings traveled from distant lands just to hear him speak, and he found it meaningless. He tested creative expression. He built the most magnificent temple in history, gardens that became legendary, architecture that defined an era, and he found it meaningless. He tested physical pleasure. 700 wives, 300 concubines, every sensual experience available to humanity, and he found it meaningless. He tested power. He ruled an empire, commanded armies, shaped the destiny of nations, and he found it meaningless. He tested spiritual devotion. He built God's temple, offered thousands of sacrifices, communed with the divine, and even that he found problematic. What's left? Solomon tested everything available to human experience, and not superficially, not as a casual dabbler. He pursued each avenue to its absolute limit. He had resources, intelligence, and time that no other human has ever possessed. If meaning existed anywhere in human experience, Solomon would have found it. He didn't. This is the empirical proof that haunts Ecclesiastes. Solomon's conclusion isn't theoretical, it's experimental, verified, replicated across every domain of human striving, and the result is always the same: meaningless, meaningless, everything is meaningless. But there's something even more disturbing buried in the text, something about time itself. Chapter 3 is famous for its poetry. There is a time for everything, and a season for every activity under the heavens. A time to be born and a time to die. A time to plant and a time to uproot. A time to kill and a time to heal. Most people read this as beautiful, comforting even, the natural rhythm of life. But look at what Solomon says immediately after. What do workers gain from their toil? I have seen the burden God has laid on the human race. He has made everything beautiful in its time. He has also set eternity in the human heart. Yet no one can fathom what God has done from beginning to end. Do you see the trap? God placed eternity in your heart. You have an innate sense of the infinite, a longing for permanence, for ultimate meaning, for something that transcends time. But you exist in time, in the cycle, in the machine where everything has its season and then passes. Your heart reaches for eternity, but your hands can only grasp vapor. This is the fundamental human predicament according to Solomon. We're built to desire what we cannot have, designed to long for what doesn't exist in our realm of experience. It's not just that life is meaningless, it's that we're cursed to know it's meaningless while simultaneously being unable to accept that fact. The eternity in our hearts makes us dissatisfied with temporal pleasures. But we have no access to actual eternity. We're trapped between finite existence and infinite longing, and there's no resolution, no escape, no way to reconcile the contradiction. This is why Solomon's advice to enjoy simple pleasures is so complex. He's not saying just be happy, he's saying recognize the trap you're in. Acknowledge the eternity in your heart. Feel the longing. and then choose to find joy in the temporal anyway, not because it satisfies the longing. It doesn't. It can't. But because it's all you have. This requires a psychological sophistication most people never develop. The ability to hold two contradictory truths simultaneously. That life is meaningless and that joy is still possible. That death negates everything and that living fully still matters. That the universe is indifferent and that love is still worth experiencing. This is the dark wisdom of Ecclesiastes. Not optimism, not pessimism, but a clear-eyed acceptance of paradox. And Solomon takes this further when he examines oppression and injustice. Chapter 4, verse 1. Again I looked and saw all the oppression that was taking place under the sun. I saw the tears of the oppressed, and they have no comforter. Power was on the side of their oppressors, and they have no comforter. Notice what he's observing. The oppressed suffer. They cry out. No one comforts them. The oppressors prosper. They have power. They face no consequences. This is the raw reality of human civilization. The powerful exploit the weak suffer. Justice is absent. God doesn't intervene. And Solomon's response? Chapter 4, verse 2. And I declared that the dead who had already died are happier than the living who are still alive. But better than both is the one who has never been born, who has not seen the evil that is done under the sun. This is one of the darkest passages in all of Scripture. Solomon is saying that death is preferable to life, and non-existence is preferable to both. Because to exist is to witness evil, to participate in a system where oppression goes unpunished, where suffering is random and meaningless, where no cosmic justice balances the scales. And you can't even claim ignorance. Once you see it, you can't unsee it. The evil is real, the suffering is real, the absence of intervention is real. So what do you do with that knowledge? Most religious systems would offer hope at this point. Promise that justice comes later, that God will set things right, that the oppressed will be rewarded and the oppressors punished. But Solomon doesn't say that. He just observes the horror, states the preference for non-existence, and moves on. This is the unflinching honesty that makes Ecclesiastes so difficult. Solomon refuses to offer comfort he hasn't verified. He won't promise what he hasn't seen. If there's no evidence of cosmic justice in observable reality, he won't claim it exists. Even if that means admitting that life itself might be a net negative. Even if that means suggesting that never being born is the optimal outcome. He follows the evidence, no matter where it leads, no matter how dark the conclusion. And then he asks another question that destroys conventional morality. Chapter 7, verse 15. In this meaningless life of mine, I have seen both of these, the righteous perishing in their righteousness, and the wicked living long in their wickedness. He's describing what philosophers call the problem of evil, but Solomon doesn't treat it as a problem to be solved. He treats it as an observation to be accepted. The righteous die young, the wicked live long. That's just how it is. And his advice? Chapter 7, verse 16. Do not be over-righteous, neither be over-wise. Why destroy yourself? Do not be overwicked, and do not be a fool. Why die before your time? This is shocking. Solomon isn't saying be good. He's saying be moderate in your goodness. Don't be too righteous, because it might get you killed. Don't be too wicked, because you might face consequences. Find the middle path, not because it's morally superior, but because it's strategically sound. This is virtue as pragmatism, morality as survival strategy, not divine command, not cosmic law, just practical advice for navigating a meaningless universe that doesn't reward righteousness. How do religious people handle this? They don't. They skip over it. Quote other parts of the Bible. Claim Solomon was in a dark period, but the text is there, unambiguous, uncomfortable, undeniable. And it suggests that even morality itself is just another human construct with no cosmic backing, another vapor, another breath, another thing we made up to make existence bearable. Solomon also examines companionship. You might think, given his nihilism, that he would dismiss relationships as meaningless too, but he doesn't. Chapter 4, verse 9. Two are better than one, because they have a good return for their labor. If either of them falls down, one can help the other up. But pity anyone who falls and has no one to help them up. Also, if two lie down together, they will keep warm. But how can one keep warm alone? Though one may be overpowered, Two can defend themselves. A cord of 3 strands is not quickly broken. This is one of the few positive passages in Ecclesiastes. And notice what it's based on. Not cosmic meaning, not divine purpose, but practical utility. Companionship is valuable because it provides concrete benefits. Mutual aid, warmth, defense. Not because relationships give life meaning, but because they make meaningless life more bearable. This is Solomon's consistent pattern. He doesn't pretend things matter cosmically when they don't, but he acknowledges what has practical value in the moment. Food tastes good, even if eating is ultimately meaningless. Wine brings joy, even if joy is temporary. Companionship helps even if we all die alone in the end. Accept the meaninglessness, then engage with what works anyway. And then Solomon turns to something that reveals just how modern his thinking was. Chapter 5, verse 10. Whoever loves money never has enough. Whoever loves wealth is never satisfied with their income. This too is meaningless. He's describing what we now call the hedonic treadmill, the psychological adaptation that prevents sustained happiness from material gain. You acquire wealth. You adapt. You need more. The satisfaction is always temporary. The hunger always returns. You can never have enough because enough is a moving target that stays forever ahead of you. Solomon discovered this 3,000 years before modern psychology proved it experimentally. And his conclusion? Chapter 5, verse 12. The sleep of a laborer is sweet, whether they eat little or much. But as for the rich, their abundance permits them no sleep. The poor man sleeps well. He has little. He doesn't worry about losing it. The rich man can't sleep. He has much. Every hour awake is spent protecting it, growing it, fearing its loss. So who's actually better off? By conventional standards, the rich man. He has resources, options, security, but by the standard of actual experienced quality of life, maybe the poor man. Maybe the one with less has more peace. This inverts everything society teaches about success and happiness. And Solomon isn't theorizing. He was the richest man alive. He's reporting from the inside of wealth, telling you what it actually feels like. And what it feels like is empty, anxious, unsatisfying. The wealth brings no peace, just more wealth to protect, more complexity to manage, more reasons to lie awake at night. Now watch what Solomon does with religion itself. Chapter 5, verse 1. Guard your steps when you go to the house of God. Go near to listen rather than to offer the sacrifice of fools who do not know that they do wrong. Do not be quick with your mouth. Do not be hasty in your heart to utter anything before God. God is in heaven and you are on earth, so let your words be few. He's warning against religious performance, against the assumption that God wants your sacrifices, your prayers, your elaborate worship. God is in heaven. You are on earth. The distance is infinite. And you think your words matter? You think your rituals affect divine reality? Solomon is skeptical even of religious practice. Not because God doesn't exist, but because human attempts to reach God are probably futile. We're earthbound creatures trying to affect heaven. It's absurd when you think about it. Like ants trying to negotiate with humans. The scale is wrong. The communication is impossible. The entire enterprise is built on assumptions we can't verify. So what should you do? Chapter 5, verse 2 continues. Do not be quick with your mouth. Do not be hasty in your heart to utter anything before God. God is in heaven and you are on earth, so let your words be few. A dream comes when there are many cares, and many words mark the speech of a fool. Let your words be few. Don't presume intimacy with God. Don't think your religious activity matters to the infinite. Just acknowledge the vast distance, the cosmic separation, the fundamental inequality, and be quiet. This is almost atheistic in its practical effect. If you can't reach God, if your words don't matter, if the distance is unbridgeable, then religion becomes a human activity with no divine connection. Just rituals we perform to comfort ourselves, stories we tell to make the universe feel less indifferent, and Solomon sees through it all. But he's not condemning it. He's just being honest about what it is. And then Solomon addresses something that modern people especially struggle with: the relationship between effort and outcome. We're taught that hard work leads to success, that merit determines results, that the universe rewards those who try hardest. Chapter 9, verse 11 destroys this completely. I have seen something else under the sun. The race is not to the swift or the battle to the strong, nor does food come to the wise or wealth to the brilliant or favor to the learned, but time and chance happen to them all. Time and chance, not merit, not effort, not virtue or intelligence or skill. Random factors beyond your control determine your outcomes more than anything you do. The swift runner might trip. The strong warrior might face bad terrain. The wise might starve while fools feast, and there's nothing you can do about it. This is the ultimate assault on the just world hypothesis. The belief that good things happen to good people, that effort determines outcome, that the universe has built-in fairness. It doesn't. It never did. Humans invented that story because the truth is unbearable. The truth is, you can do everything right and still lose. You can be stupid and lazy and still win. Because time and chance, not justice, govern outcomes. And Solomon knows this creates a problem. If outcomes are random, why bother trying? If effort doesn't determine results, why make effort? His answer is subtle but important. Chapter 9, verse 10. Whatever your hand finds to do it with all your might. For in the realm of the dead, where you are going, there is neither working nor planning nor knowledge nor wisdom. Do the work anyway. Not because it guarantees success, it doesn't, but because you're alive now. And when you're dead, you can't do anything. So while you have the chance, while you have hands and mind and strength, use them. Fully, completely, without holding back. Not because it matters cosmically, but because doing nothing is worse. Because passivity in the face of meaninglessness is surrender. And even if the outcome is random, the experience of full engagement has value. Temporary value, subjective value, but value nonetheless. This is Solomon's practical wisdom emerging through the nihilism. Yes, everything is meaningless. Yes, outcomes are random. Yes, death negates all. But you're here now, and now is all you have. So live now as if it matters, even though it doesn't. Try now as if effort determines outcome, even though it doesn't. Feel now as if feelings last, even though they don't. This is choosing life in full knowledge of its absurdity. And there's something almost heroic in that choice. Not because it's wise, but because it's defiant. It's saying to the indifferent universe, I know you don't care. I know nothing I do matters to you. And I'm going to live fully anyway. Not for cosmic reasons, for human ones. For the temporary, subjective, ultimately meaningless experience of being alive. And Solomon validates this approach, not with grand promises, not with theological guarantees, but with simple observation. It beats the alternative. Now let's examine something that makes modern readers especially uncomfortable. Solomon's view of women. Chapter 7, verse 26. I find more bitter than death the woman who is a snare, whose heart is a trap, and whose hands are chains. The man who pleases God will escape her, but the sinner she will ensnare. And then verse 28, while I was still searching but not finding, I found one upright man among 1,000, but not one upright woman among them all. This is harsh, misogynistic by modern standards, and scholars struggle with it. But remember Solomon's context. 700 wives, 300 concubines. He experienced relationships with women at a scale no other human ever has. And his conclusion is dark, not because all women are evil, but because in his experience, he found the relationships hollow, transactional, empty, just like everything else. This isn't really about women. It's about Solomon's inability to find genuine connection anywhere. One upright man in 1,000, 0 upright women. Everyone is corrupt. Everyone is selfish. Everyone is playing games. This is the loneliness of the disillusioned. When you see through human nature, when you recognize that everyone operates from self-interest, when you can't believe in genuine altruism anymore, you end up alone, even surrounded by 1,000 people. And Solomon was surrounded by more people than almost anyone in history. Wives, concubines, servants, advisors, subjects, yet utterly isolated, because he couldn't connect, couldn't believe, couldn't trust. The wisdom that revealed meaninglessness also revealed human nature. And what he saw in human nature made connection impossible. This is another cost of seeing clearly. You lose the ability to maintain comfortable illusions about people. You see the manipulation, the self-interest, the performance, and once you see it, you can't participate authentically anymore. You become an observer, alone in the crowd, isolated by insight. And Solomon knew this isolation was part of the problem. Chapter 4, verse 8. There was a man all alone. He had neither son nor brother. There was no end to his toil. Yet his eyes were not content with his wealth. "For whom am I toiling?" he asked. "And why am I depriving myself of enjoyment? This too is meaningless, a miserable business, working without connection, accumulating without purpose, achieving without anyone to share it with." Solomon is describing his own condition, the richest, wisest, most powerful man alive, and completely alone, because wisdom isolates, because seeing clearly separates you from those still caught in illusion, because you can't go back to not knowing what you know. This is the price of awakening, and Solomon paid it fully. He has everything and nothing. He knows everything and wishes he didn't. He's achieved all and found it empty. And he can't share this truth with anyone because they either won't understand or won't want to hear it. But here's where Ecclesiastes becomes almost unbearably dark. Chapter 6, verse 3 through 5. "A man may have 100 children and live many years, yet no matter how long he lives, if he cannot enjoy his prosperity and does not receive proper burial, I say that a stillborn child is better off than he. It comes without meaning, it departs in darkness, and in darkness its name is shrouded. Though it never saw the sun or knew anything, it has more rest than does that man, even if he lives 1,000 years twice over, but fails to enjoy his prosperity. Do not all go to the same place?" Solomon is saying a stillborn child has it better than a man who lives 2,000 years but can't enjoy life. Think about that. Not a man who suffers, not a man who's tortured or oppressed, just a man who has prosperity but can't enjoy it, can't feel satisfaction, can't experience peace. That man would be better off never being born, because existence without the capacity for enjoyment is worse than non-existence, and both end in the same place anyway. Death, the grave, the void where all distinctions dissolve. This reveals Solomon's core belief. If you can't enjoy existence, existence itself is the problem, not your circumstances. The very fact of being alive becomes a burden when you've lost the capacity for joy, and Solomon has lost it. The wine doesn't taste good anymore. The accomplishments don't satisfy. The wisdom brings only sorrow. He's alive but can't enjoy life. And according to his own logic, he'd be better off having never been born. Yet he continues, writing, observing, reporting. Why? He never says. Maybe because he can't stop. Maybe because documenting the meaninglessness is the only thing left that feels like purpose. Maybe because teaching others to see clearly is the final act of a man who has nothing left to lose. Or maybe because despite everything, despite the nihilism and the despair and the clear-eyed acknowledgement of futility, there's still something in him that wants to keep going. Not hope. Hope is too strong a word. But perhaps momentum. The body keeps breathing. The mind keeps thinking. The hand keeps writing. Not because it matters, but because stopping feels like surrender to something worse than meaninglessness. Solomon also examines reputation, that thing humans cling to when immediate pleasures fail. Chapter 7, verse 1. "A good name is better than fine perfume, and the day of death better than the day of birth. Better to die than to be born, because death ends the suffering. Birth begins it." But notice he still values a good name, still thinks reputation matters in some way, not cosmically, but socially, practically. You have to live among humans, and humans judge by reputation. So even in a meaningless universe, there's tactical value in being well regarded. It makes the temporary existence easier. People treat you better. Opportunities come more freely. Resources flow toward good reputations and away from bad ones. So cultivate it, not because it has ultimate worth, but because it has immediate utility. This is Solomon's consistent framework. Nothing matters eternally, but some things matter temporarily, and temporary is all we have. Then he gives advice that sounds wise until you think about it too hard. Chapter 7, verse 8. "The end of a matter is better than its beginning, and patience is better than pride." Patience is better than pride, because pride is based on the belief that you matter, that your achievements are significant, that your position is deserved and permanent. Pride is the ultimate delusion in a universe of vapor. Patience acknowledges time, accepts that outcomes unfold slowly, doesn't rush to claim credit or assert importance. Patience is compatible with meaninglessness in a way pride is not, because patience doesn't require anything to matter. It just requires waiting, and waiting is easier when you recognize nothing's at stake anyway. But then Solomon undercuts even this. Chapter 7, verse 13. Consider what God has done. Who can straighten what he has made crooked? You can't fix what God twisted. Can't improve what the Creator designed flawed. Can't correct the fundamental structure of reality. So what's the point of patience? What's the point of virtue? What's the point of trying to navigate well through a system rigged against meaning? Solomon doesn't answer. He just poses the question. Makes you sit with it. Makes you feel the trap. You're in a crooked system made by God. You can't straighten it. You can't escape it. You can only recognize it. And recognizing it changes nothing except your level of awareness, which might actually make things worse. Ignorance might be better. But once you've seen the crookedness, you can't unsee it. So you're stuck, aware of the trap, unable to escape, conscious of meaninglessness, compelled to continue anyway. And this brings us to one of the most disturbing sections. Chapter 8, verse 14. There is something else meaningless that occurs on earth. The righteous who get what the wicked deserve, and the wicked who get what the righteous deserve. This too, I say, is meaningless. The moral structure is inverted. Good people suffer as if they were evil. Evil people prosper as if they were good. And this isn't occasional. It's common enough that Solomon calls it a pattern, a feature of existence, not a bug, not an exception, not a temporary aberration that will be corrected, just how things are. And his response, chapter 8, verse 15. So I commend the enjoyment of life, because there is nothing better for a person under the sun than to eat and drink and be glad. Then joy will accompany them in their toil all the days of the life God has given them under the sun. Eat, drink, be glad. Because what else can you do? You can't fix the system, can't make it fair, can't align outcomes with desert. So stop trying. Stop expecting justice. Stop believing effort determines results. Just take what small pleasures are available and be grateful they exist at all. This is the ultimate acceptance, not of meaning, but of meaninglessness, not of justice, but of randomness, not of cosmic purpose, but of cosmic indifference, and somehow finding a way to continue anyway, not because it makes sense, but because not continuing is worse. If this darkness opened something in you, if you felt the weight of Solomon's words, subscribe to the hidden codex. Because we don't trade in comfortable lies here. We explore the shadows, the truths that society buries, the wisdom that terrifies. Next time, we'll descend into something even darker, something that makes Ecclesiastes look hopeful. Until then, remember Solomon's final advice. Eat your bread with joy, drink your wine with a glad heart, not because it matters, but because it's what you have. And that has to be enough.